Okay, so this video is a compilation of some videos that I've created over the years about how to run a 3:30 marathon. You know, a lot of you out there are training for this particular race, and it's 8:01 mile pace for 26.2 miles or 4:59 kilometer pace for 42.2 kilometers. So, and some of the things I want you to keep in mind is when I talk about varied pace long runs, those varied pace long runs are going to tax you both mentally and physically. So make sure that when you're doing those faster varied pace long runs that you'll be hearing me discuss throughout these videos, make sure you're wearing racing flats during those particular varied pace long runs. Okay, they should be a shoe that's has a lot of cushion but very lightweight. It should not be a training shoe. So during the varied pace long runs that you'll hear me talk about, make sure you're wearing a lighter shoe on your foot, because again, that's going to help you both psychologically and just to feel and to see those faster splits that you're hitting, either kilometer splits or mile splits. It helps you to feel like you're in great shape, and that's what I was doing over the years too. I would do my varied pace long runs for my marathons in racing flats, and then the alternate weeks, every other week, I would, you should be doing a varied pace long run one week, followed the next week by an easy relaxed long run. During those relaxed long runs, wear your training shoes. So just keep that in mind. And obviously the other things I want you to keep in mind too is all the other fundamentals that go into running a sub 3:30 marathon. It's ice baths. It's propping your feet up on the wall for about 10 to 15 minutes after every long run or after every track session, fartlek workout you're doing, tempo runs, hill repetitions, any type of really hard anaerobic workouts. Make sure you prop your feet up on the wall for about 10 to 15 minutes. That was a strategy tactic that Jack Hazen at Malone University, who coached me from 1995 to 2000, suggested to all of us when we were at Malone. And that will help you recover, just to help flush out that lactic acid in your legs. Your legs will go numb after a few minutes after doing that, but it's, again, getting proper sleep, mental rehearsal. Make sure you're visualizing what type of time you're going for about 10 minutes each day. Okay, when you're first waking up in the morning or when you go to bed at night, turn off all the devices and really see yourself performing at the level that you're dreaming about. If you're trying to break a 3-hour marathon, or you're trying to break a 30-minute 10K, whatever particular time goal you have in mind, make sure you're doing that. So with that, I will end here, but I hope that these videos that you now will watch will help you in your preparation in breaking the 3-hour and 30-minute marathon barrier. Feel free to leave me a comment below. Let me know what you thought. Definitely, and if you have any other questions or concerns, leave me a comment. I will definitely reach back out to you. Thanks so much for your support of RunDreamAchieve.com. Also, check out the resources below these videos, as well as on the new RunDreamAchieve.com website that should be launched this month, December 2023. 3:30 marathon pace comes out to 8 minutes per mile or 4 minutes and 58 seconds per kilometer. And so anybody that's trying to run 3:29:59 had better have their head on straight. It is a very difficult time, very aggressive, competitive marathon time that a lot of athletes worldwide are trying to run. And again, the faster you're trying to run this distance, the more that's going to be required out of you. I talk about how important it is to focus more on the quality of the training that you're doing and not so much the volume. Yes, you do have to be consistent when it comes to marathon training, but again, it's a process that doesn't happen overnight. To sustain 8-minute mile pace for 26.2 miles or 4:58 kilometer pace for 42.2 straight kilometers takes an enormous amount of hard work. It takes proper planning. That's why I continue to stress the importance of thinking outside the box. Don't get so hyped up about how much volume you're doing, because if you're running too much of your volume far too slow, it's going to be very difficult for you to sustain sub 3-hour, that sub 3:30 marathon pace that you're aiming for. So again, if you're running 100 miles a week and 95% of that volume is run at 10-minute mile pace, it's going to make you very strong endurance-wise, but in terms of your strength and stamina, your ability to handle higher amounts of lactic acid buildup and being able to clear that lactic acid faster than it's building up, it's going to be very difficult because you're still training at too low of a heart rate and you're running at too aerobic activity. You're running too aerobically. So you have to stress the body enough and sufficiently. I talk about in the running courses that I teach and the training plans that I've created, the importance of doing one VO2 max workout per week. That's when you're doing the speed training, the hard, aggressive, extremely tough workouts, the speed development type workouts like repeat miles on the track, repeat 2 miles. Those are the same types of workouts I was doing to run 2:19:35. There were times where I didn't have athletes to train with, and I was out there on my own. I knew the specific paces that I was going for. In your case, you got to get that 8-minute mile pace or 4:58 kilometer pace to feel easier. So you have to train at paces that are closer down toward 6:30 mile pace or closer down toward 3:45 kilometer pace. Again, the faster you train at, the more efficient, the more economical you're going to be able to race. Because again, you're teaching the body to burn fat at race pace and to conserve what you have a lot less of, which is carbohydrate. We only have around 1,700 to 1,800 calories at any given time built up in our bodies in glycogen storage. So a lot of times athletes that are trying to run at 3:30 marathon pace are doing a lot of incorrect things in the race and in training as well. So we work in the running courses, in the training plans, and especially in the private running community where we work through these obstacles. We find out what the athlete is doing in training. One of the biggest things for me too is to definitely find out what is the background of the athlete. What is the longest long run they've done? What pace are they doing their tempo runs at? How fast are they running on their easy days? Because these things will help me help you as the athlete to get better results by correcting those leaks in your training that has been giving you issues in the past. Because there's a lot of athletes around the world that are trying to run 3:30 marathon pace. They're working hard. They certainly are not lacking in the motivation or drive department, but they still are not able to sustain that sub 3:30 marathon pace for the entire distance of the race. And a big reason for that is simply they're running too low of a percentage of their weekly volume, far too slow. They're running more toward 9 to 10 minute mile pace, or maybe around 6 to 6:30 kilometer pace in training for too high of a volume, too high of a percentage of their weekly volume. So that has to be corrected. The best middle to long distance runners are running any closer up toward around 40% of their weekly volume at or below goal race pace. So you have to do longer tempo runs. A 3 to 4 mile tempo run might be great for a 5K athlete, but it's not going to build that strength and stamina that the athlete that's training for us to sustain 3:30 marathon pace for 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers. 3 to 4 miles is simply not enough. That's a great workout for a miler or a 10K athlete, but for a half marathoner or for somebody that's trying to run a full marathon under 3 minutes or 3 hours and 30 minutes, that tempo run has to be lengthened out. So that's the process we work through in the private running community, in the running courses and the training plans. We have a plan in place where we focus more on getting the athlete to adapt to 3 to 4 miles first. And then as the athlete adapts, and that usually takes anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, then we start moving into longer tempo runs. We do one VO2 max speed workout per week as well, where you're running at significantly faster pace than 3:30 marathon pace. And there's a reason behind that. Again, you want to teach the body to burn fat at race pace, conserve carbohydrate, and to call upon and recruit more fast twitch muscle fibers. The more fast twitch muscle fibers that you can recruit, the more efficient your muscles are going to function throughout the race. We also focus on, too, looking at the other variables that a lot of athletes are missing. One big mistake I see a lot of runners making, and I've made it in the past too, earlier in my career, is they're running far too aggressive too early in the race. They're not hydrating well in practice, and they're not taking in enough fluid and calories in the marathon race as well. So there's a lot of things that go into sustaining 3:30 marathon pace. Okay, there's a lot of athletes around the world that can run several miles or several kilometers at this pace, but far fewer that can sustain it for the full entire duration of the race. And that is what I want you to be able to do, thinking about these types of workouts. So, when we talk about mile repeats, you have to get to a point where, if I was going for a sub 3:30 marathon, and to sustain 3:30 marathon pace, I would want to focus on getting my mile repeats, doing 5 to 6 1-mile reps on the track at around 6:30 to 6:32 per rep, with eventually, when I have adapted to these types of workouts and intensities, I would want to be able to do 6 of those with around 60 seconds to 90 seconds rest in between each one. Very aggressive. You have to be extremely fit to focus on doing intervals of that speed with that little bit of rest. So early on, when you're not as fit, I would focus on doing the mile repeats right around 6:55 per rep, and I would give myself probably around 3 to 4 minutes rest early on when I'm not as anaerobically fit. So there's a method to my madness in terms of being a consultant and a coach for athletes online. We don't just jump into long tempo runs. We don't just jump into doing faster paced long runs that I talk about in other videos. You don't want to run every single weekend fast and long. Okay, it's a quick way to become very stale, and you can't continue to push the body hard anaerobically and expect a very high return on your time investment. So you have to train smart. And again, that's the key concept behind Run, Dream, Achieve fitness consultations and this philosophy that I have here. We want to train smarter rather than harder. It's not about the volume you're putting in. It's about the quality of the work that you're putting in. So if you're focusing on doing repeat 800, so that's the types of workouts in terms of getting that 3:30 marathon pace to feel easier, I would focus on doing 10 800s when you're very fit at around 3 minutes and 15 seconds per interval, with around 90 seconds rest in between each one. Again, that's when you're all the running plans and running courses that I have on RunDreamAchieve.com are 16 weeks in length. So early on, you're not going to be doing 800s and 3:15. Okay, we may start off, running those 800s at around 3:35 per interval, and your recovery might be around 2 minutes rest between each one, or 3 minutes rest in between each interval, as opposed to doing those at 3:15 per rep and only giving yourself 60 seconds to 90 seconds rest in between each one of those repetitions. So again, it's a gradual process where we teach the athlete to do the correct workouts first, build the first and foremost, build that aerobic base that the athlete needs to be able to sustain, eventually handle these harder anaerobic workouts that we're talking about here, to get that sub 3 hour marathon, 3 hour, 30-minute marathon pace to feel easier. You have to also focus on doing all the other things that go into running great over the marathon distance. Proper pacing in the race is key. You do not want to go out the first half of a marathon at an hour and 10 minutes. Okay, you're not, even if you're trying to run that fast in the first early stages of the first few miles or the first few kilometers of your marathon, you're going to be either having to drop out the second half because you went out far too aggressive, or you're going to be jogging or walking the rest of the way. Okay, now I've made that mistake in the past too, so I understand. I remember, for example, I went out at the 2007 Grandma's Marathon. I went out in 1:10:31 at the first half marathon. I was at 2:28 marathon pace through 20 miles. I think it was a little over an hour and 53 minutes. I ended up running 2 hours and 40 minutes for the marathon, 2:40:02, which was a personal best at that time. But I had to work and eventually slow down in the early stages of the race before I was able to eventually run 2:19:35. It took time. Okay, so always focus on doing a negative split as well. Okay, if you're going to run a sub 3:30 marathon pace for the entire distance, focus on running that second half faster than you're running the first half. That is very, very important. So you definitely want to be passing people in the latter stages of your marathon rather than being passed by other athletes. So that is very, very key. Do not neglect mental rehearsal. You have to see yourself running 3:29:59 repeatedly, 10 to 15 minutes each day. See yourself running at the high level that you're dreaming about. See yourself getting across the finish line with 3:29:59 or faster on the clock. Spend 10 to 15 minutes. The best time of the day really to do this is either right before you're going to bed at night, or when you're first getting up in the morning. Spend some time mentally rehearsing, going over, training your subconscious mind to do what it is you're going for, and that is to run 3:29:59 for the marathon distance. So if there's anything else that I didn't cover that you need a little bit more specifics about, please feel free to leave me a comment below. Definitely share this video. Give me a like if you can. It helps the channel grow and more athletes to see this video. And definitely share it. Hopefully you have friends or family that maybe are trying to run a sub 3:30 marathon, and that would like a little bit more either private coaching with me or may be interested in a running course or a training plan. So I wish you all the best in your training and your preparation. I definitely look forward to hearing about your sub 3:30 marathon, and I will talk to you in the next video. You know, obviously, if you're running too many of your weekly miles too slow, it's going to be very, very difficult to be able to sustain 8-minute mile pace for 26.2 miles. One of the top recommendations that I continue to share with my followers on the website, here on YouTube, and within the RunDreamAchieve University is training between a minute and 2 minutes faster than your goal marathon race pace. You know, a sub 3:30 marathon training plan should encompass a very, very high emphasis on running at between 6-minute and 8-minute mile pace. You got to get to a point where 8 minutes per mile for 26.2 miles is no longer something that you need to feel threatened by. If you've spent adequate time running at 6-minute mile pace, you know, even if it's for short amount of time, you know, say during your intervals on the track, if you're doing like 12 to 16 times 400 meters on the track at 6 to 7-minute mile pace, I guarantee you over a 16-week block of training, you know, 8-minute mile pace is going to feel very, very easy. You know, and now it's definitely not going to feel easy at the 20-mile mark in the marathon. But what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to make those changes in the race itself, and to be able to react to your competition. You know, you want to be able to, you know, click off 7:45, 8:10, you know, 8:05, 7:50 miles. You know, remember it's a sub 3:30 marathon is an average of 8 minutes per mile for 26.2 miles. So, you know, obviously, as I continue to teach, implement varying up the paces of your long runs. Don't just get caught up in putting in those long, slow long runs, which are still very, very critical for sub 3:30 marathon success, in terms of building your endurance, burning fat, making your heart stronger where it doesn't have to, you know, it's able to over time clear lactic acid faster than it's building up. Those long, easy runs are very, very important. But when it comes to racing a marathon, and not just running the marathon, racing a marathon 26.2 miles and being able to sustain 8-minute mile pace, you've got to get to a point where you're doing your long runs at more an aggressive type pace. You know, not every single weekend. I always teach alternate one hard long run followed by the following week by an easy recovery long run. That way you're pushing the body on a higher anaerobic level, you're training at a higher heart rate for a longer period of time, but you're also backing off when you know you should, so you can get those physiological adaptations that occur from pushing the body at, you know, stressing the body's anaerobic system. And that's really the key. You don't want to you know, you don't want to get to a point where you're just running long, slow, monotonous miles. You know, again, it's very, very critical that you're not just looking at running high miles. You know, higher mileage is never, it's most often not the case is in terms of trying to break a specific marathon time. It's what percentage of your weekly volume are you spending, you know, training at your race pace or far below it. And I'm talking like far, far below it. Like when I was training for trying to break a 2-hour and 22-minute marathon, you know, I was a 2:43 marathoner who at that time could hold 6:14 pace for 26.2 miles. But I was training on the track a lot of times at sub 4-minute mile pace. So a lot of the reason why I was able to eventually hold 5:19 mile pace for 26.2 miles was because of those types of workouts. I was doing, you know, repeat 200s in like 28 to 29 seconds. I was doing very, very fast repeat quarters on the track, not quite at sub 4-minute mile pace, but it was usually like 62 to 65 second pace. But a lot of times, like I said, I was doing, you know, repeat 100s, repeat 150s, repeat 200s, repeat 300s at sub 4-minute mile pace. So the same regarding, you know, the same types of workouts you need to be thinking about when you're trying to break, you know, a sub 3:30 marathon time. And I've created a new course that I'm working on currently, and I'll leave the link to that course in the description of this video, and it's going to be called the Sub 330 Marathon Blueprint. And it's going to be kind of a mini course. It's going to be mainly focused on video tutorials, and it's going to conclude with a 16-week training schedule that's specifically built for the athlete trying to break sub 3 hours and 30 minutes. So if you're trying to get the 3:29:59 or faster, this is the course you want to be focused on. You really want to narrow your focus and figure out what is it that I need to do to be able to sustain 8-minute mile pace. And my goal with you in this new course is to teach you through extended videos is the exact steps that you need to be taking and you need to be focusing on, the things you need to avoid doing and the things you definitely need to be doing to run a 3:29:59 marathon or faster. And trying to get away from making the mistakes of other athletes, learn from their mistakes. And I do share a lot of my failures as well on the Run Dream Achieve YouTube channel and on the blog. I didn't, just like I said, a 2:19 marathon did not just fall on my lap. I had a lot of ups and downs, some failures along the way, and I'm going to be teaching you about some of the things to avoid doing that I did over the years, and some of the things you definitely do want to focus on that helped me break the 2 hour and 20-minute marathon barrier. So, anybody that's searching for a sub 3:30 marathon training plan has to be seeking out race pace training. Don't look for just some kind of cookie cutter sub 3:30 marathon training plan. Don't look for that, because it's you want some personal interaction. Some of the biggest changes in my performances, athletic performances, and mental training took place from being mentored by some of the world's top distance running coaches, and training with some of the world's best long distance runners. I saw what they were teaching. I saw what they were doing. I looked at their habits, how they were training, what they were doing, the words they were using, their mindset, and those are the things that will definitely take your athletic performance to the next level. But it's that personal development piece that a cookie cutter sub 3:30 marathon training plan that you can find anywhere online is not going to teach you. Okay, I want to be able to obviously provide value to the athlete that's committed and is not just interested in breaking a 3:30 marathon. Obviously, there's an enormous difference between being interested in doing something and being fully committed to doing it. And I see that in athletics. I see it in business. I see it in the military. You can't just talk about wanting to break 3:30. You got to be willing to apply the things that you see other athletes that are doing it, and take those strategies and run with them, and make sure that you're fully committed to doing it. And obviously, if you're on this channel, it already tells me you're highly disciplined, highly focused, highly driven to break that time barrier. So I'm excited about this particular course. 3:30 marathon is, in my opinion, an elite time. Anything really under 3 hours and 30 minutes, in my opinion, is an elite marathon time. Now, all athletes are going to have different viewpoints of that. If you're looking at the top echelon of athletes, the sub 220, the sub 210 athletes, the sub 205 athletes, that's at such a high level, especially the faster you go down the line in terms of marathon running. But to hold 8-minute mile pace over a 26-mile period, you've got to be extremely fit, and you've got to be mentally prepared and mentally strong to be able to sustain that pace. So I'm excited about the course. Very, very excited about working with athletes online. I have a lot of things I'm working on with RunDreamAchieve.com, and I look forward to seeing you in the course if it's something that you're interested in. And I hope this video has been helpful for you in terms of trying to figure out the mindset and some of the training principles and strategies that need to be followed to break a sub 3:30 marathon. And a sub 3:30 marathon training plan absolutely needs to focus on training far below 8-minute mile pace. It's the only way. There's no easy way to make to be able to sustain marathon race pace, to make it feel easier, unless you're training at speeds that far exceed 8-minute mile pace. So that's one of the biggest strategies, or the biggest things I had to adjust in my own training to get from 243 to get to 219. You know, I had to obviously accept the fact that, I was not going to break 2 hours and 22 minutes. I was not going to go from 6:14 marathon pace to 5:25 marathon pace, which is 2:22, by doing long, slow, easy long runs, and not getting on the track and doing, repeat miles under 5-minute mile pace. So the principles I'll be teaching in the sub 330 marathon training blueprint is going to encompass the same types of strategies, techniques, and the mindset that I use to get under 2 hours and 20 minutes. So I'm excited about it. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you haven't yet, definitely subscribe to the channel. Click subscribe. Click the bell icon so anytime a new video is made, you'll be the first to know about it. How hard is it to run a 3:30 marathon? In order to do that, the athlete has to maintain 8 minutes per mile for 26.2 miles, or 4:58 per kilometer for 42.2 kilometers. And it's not easy. I mean, the marathon distance, whether you're training to break 5 hours or you're trying to break 2 hours and 30 minutes or 3 hours, or in this case, breaking 3 hours and 30 minutes, it takes an enormous amount of time and energy in order to perform at a superior level and to set a new personal best. A lot of you athletes out there, you already have you may have already ran a marathon and you already have a personal best right now. It's very hard to duplicate when you get in that flow state and when everything goes perfectly. You've tapered down correctly. You've spent the past, hopefully around 16 weeks, but preferably around 20 to 24 weeks training for your marathon. And you have to do so many different things correctly, and you have to be so patient during that buildup in order to run a fast marathon time. As I talk about in other videos, it's real important to pay attention to all of the fundamentals. It's not just about doing faster long runs. It's not just about doing repeat miles on the track or doing double threshold training workouts. When you're doing a faster, you may be doing a speed workout in the morning and then coming back and doing a tempo run or maybe a fartlek workout in the afternoon. A lot of athletes out there are doing a mixture of different types of training methods, and in order to get it right in the marathon, you really have to be strategic in your setup. It takes the body about 3 to 4 weeks to adapt to any stress or being placed on it. Okay, so how hard is it to run a 3:30 marathon? It is not going to be easy. That is breaking 3 hours and 30 minutes, in my opinion, is getting close to that elite level, especially getting under 3 hours. So few runners even run this fast of a time. And so you have to get start training closer down towards 7-minute mile pace, okay, or getting close down toward 4-minute kilometer pace as you're training for your marathon. Again, we want to get that goal race pace, that goal 3:30 marathon race pace to feel easier, more manageable, and you want to slow down less than your competition, okay? It's also extremely hard to run under a 3:30 marathon if you don't pace yourself properly, okay? So do not go out too fast in your future marathon. If this is your goal to break 3 hours and 30 minutes for the marathon, don't go out that first half marathon in an hour and 30 minutes, okay? Yes, if you go out at an hour and 30 minutes, you're at 3-hour marathon pace, okay? So yes, you've left yourself an enormous amount of time, a nice big cushion to run that second half much slower and still possibly break 3 hours and 30 minutes. But it's much wiser to run a negative split, okay? So going out around 145 to 155 through the first half and then coming back the second half at a faster clip is a much more strategic and basically a smarter way in terms of running the marathon. It's very hard to run a positive split. But yes, there are athletes out there that do run fast marathon times, even going out faster the first half, and they come back slower the second half. When I ran 2:19:35 for the marathon, I went out in 1:07:09 through the first half, and then I came back with a 1:12:26. So I went out way too aggressive, but sometimes if you've prepared properly in training and you have that, you've built up an enormous base of mileage, you've really trained well below your goal 3:30 marathon goal pace, and you go out a little more aggressive than you should, and you've prepared well and you've tapered down correctly, you can still run a new personal best and still break 3 hours and 30 minutes running a positive split, as long as, again, you hydrate well in the race, you really have prepared well prior to that race. But still, between the two, it's a better option to run a negative split. Be a little bit more conservative in the first half, and then really focus on running as hard as you possibly can in that last 10 kilometers of the race. Okay, there's two parts of the marathon. Okay, and you've heard it probably from other athletes. It's that first 20 miles and the last 10 kilometers of the race. So if you can get through that first 32 kilometers and still feel strong, you're in good shape. Okay, you do not want to feel like you're fatigued the first 5 miles or the first 8 kilometers in the race. So really attacking when most of your competition is the most tired and the most mentally fatigued is where you want to really put all of your emphasis at. Okay, so if you go out a little bit more conservative, you're going to have that energy to really pour it on in that last 10 kilometers of the race. Okay, and what we want to do in training is we want to teach the body to clear lactic acid faster than it's building up. And we also want to, if you're training for the marathon, you want to make sure that you're training the body to utilize what it has much more of, and that is fat storage. Okay, at any given time, we only have about 1,800 calories of carbohydrate built up in the body. So most oftentimes, athletes are hitting that so-called wall right around mile 17 or mile 18. We burn around 100 calories. If the more you weigh, the more calories you'll burn. And obviously, the faster you're running, you're burning more calories versus if you're running slower. But right around 100 to 150 calories per mile is what we burn. So naturally, we most oftentimes hit the wall right around mile 17 or 18, but you don't have to hit a wall in a marathon. Okay, again, if you've paid attention to all the fundamentals, if you've trained, you've started doing varied pace long runs, if you haven't done that and you want to break 3 hours and 30 minutes, you start doing that now. Okay, varied pace, you're running at mixture, you're running at very hard anaerobic efforts. Right at tempo pace, you're running a small portion of the long run at VO2 max pace, around 95 to 100% of your max heart rate. You're running some, like I said before, running a portion of those miles or kilometers during your long run at your anaerobic threshold, which is around 85 to 89% of your max heart rate. You're running at sprint paces, which again is VO2 max, and then you're doing a mixture of easy, relaxed running within that long run. Okay, it's a varied pace long runs, and you can also mix it up. Okay, some weekends during my own build-ups, I would do varied pace long runs. I would do steady state long runs where it was just a steady, maybe 6-minute mile pace for 10 to 15 miles, 2-mile warm up, 2 or 3-mile cool down, be just a steady effort. And then other long runs, obviously my recovery long runs were run very, very easy. Okay, anywhere from 8 to 9-minute mile pace. For me being an athlete that could sustain 5:19 mile pace for 26 miles, 8 to 9-minute mile pace is very, very relaxed. So take your goal race pace and take about 2 minutes off of that goal race pace. And that's really right around where you need to be running during those easy, relaxed long runs. Okay, the benefits of your hard training are going to come in the rest cycle. Okay, Google the word super compensation. I'll leave it here on the screen as well. That is a term most of your competition do not know anything about. Okay, the real benefits are going to come after that hard track workout, after that hard road session that you're doing, after the tempo runs. It's going to happen when you're resting. So if you're giving yourself sufficient time to recover between these hard workouts you're doing, you're going to start seeing significant time dropped off of your current personal best. Okay, I'm a big believer in a 10-day taper. If you want to break a 3-hour, 30-minute marathon, and this question of how hard is it to run a 3:30 marathon, it is going to be difficult. This is not a slow marathon time. It's a highly competitive time and one that you definitely can achieve as long as you're setting up your training strategically and properly. You're not trying to run too fast, too soon during your build-up. You're paying attention first to easy, relaxed aerobic training, then going into specific training where you're running at or close to 8-minute mile pace or 4:58 mile pace. Then you're going into your speed development phase where you're training closer down toward sub 7-minute mile pace or right around 7:20 mile pace, right in that range. Extremely fast paces, the paces that you wouldn't be really able to hold for maybe maybe 3 to 5 miles, around that range. But you want to spend some time training at those types of intense VO2 max efforts so that, again, we get that goal 3:30 marathon pace to feel easier, and for you to be able to sustain that and teach the body to clear lactic acid faster than it's building up. That's why the best runners make it look so easy. Okay, they've spent sufficient time training at a higher intensity, at a higher heart rate for a longer period of time, and for a higher percentage of their weekly volume. Okay, those athletes, the top middle to long distance runners, they're training around 40% of their weekly mileage, running at least 85% of their max heart rate. So if you're running 90 to 95% of your mileage at around 65% of your max heart rate, and you're running very aerobically, you're building an enormous amount of endurance. But again, you're not going to be able to, you're going to have a much harder time running under 3 hours and 30 minutes for the marathon if you're training too aerobically too often. So I hope this is helpful for you. And definitely, if you have additional comments, leave them in the comment section. Let me know and let the community know, those other athletes out there that are watching these videos, what you think too. And definitely, whether you're a total beginner, don't feel like you don't have anything to say here. You definitely have. Most beginners have more knowledge and more expertise than even those athletes that are very veteran, very experienced. Okay, they have something to add to us as well. And we can learn a lot from them as well. So I wish you all the best. Hope this is helpful to you. How do I train for a 3:30 marathon? This is definitely a competitive time. I mean, you have to hold basically 4:59 kilometer pace for 42.2 straight kilometers, or 8 minutes per mile for 26.2 miles. So the key thing I want you all to keep in mind is when you're trying to break a 3:30 marathon is consistency, and making sure that you're training a higher percentage of your weekly volume at or below your anaerobic threshold, because the key tactic here is you want to be able to sustain that 8-minute mile pace or the 4:59 kilometer pace more effectively throughout the race. And so if you're running too much mileage throughout the week too easily, it's going to be very hard to do that. Of course, you're going to be extremely fit, you're going to be very strong in terms of your endurance, but in terms of your strength and stamina, it does take more than just running consistent mileage over a long period of time to run a sub 3:30 marathon. Preferably, you want to focus on a minimum of 16 weeks, but optimal time frame in order to run a high quality marathon time like this is 5 to 6 months. Okay, and again, every athlete is different. Some athletes will work better with a shorter buildup, but if you're doing say an 8 to 12 week buildup, I would advise that you have at least spent a few weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, running easy, relaxed mileage before you start that build-up. Because again, you can't just jump into these training plans or to start a training plan and be able to teach your body to really adapt to the hard training you're doing in a span of 2 to 3 months. It can be done, but you definitely have to have a general strong aerobic base built first. Okay, now in terms of athletes out there such as yourself that may be trying to break a 3:30 marathon, I would advise to be doing strides 2 to 3 times per week. Okay, you can do those during your easy runs, you can do them at the start of your track workouts or your tempo runs. Those strides are anywhere from 50 to 100 meters in length, but what I want you to keep in mind in regards to strides and doing these over a consistent basis from say a minimum of 2 months, but preferably up to 5 to 6 months, is you're doing those 50 to 100 meter strides at or close to all-out efforts. So over a long period of time, you will have spent several miles or several kilometers at pretty much all-out sprint paces on top of all the other workouts you're doing. So keep that in mind. Stay consistent with your strides. As I talk about in other videos, if you're trying to break a 3:30 marathon and you want to get 8-minute mile pace for 26.2 miles to feel easier, or 4:59 kilometer pace for 42.2 kilometers, you have to start running at faster paces. Okay, anything really under 3 hours and 30 minutes for the marathon, in my opinion, you're getting closer to that elite level that where so few athletes really are able to run at. Okay, the faster you run this distance, the more specific your training needs to be. Okay, that means that you want to be doing, my favorite types of workouts training for the marathon was 1,600 meter repetitions on the track, 200 meter reps on the track, with between 3 to 5 minutes of recovery in between each one when I was very, very fit. Again, the beginning stages of your buildup, be patient with yourself, okay? Your splits on the track are not going to be as fast. You're going to need more rest, okay? But as your body adapts, and it will always adapt to the training you're doing, those paces per kilometers, if you're doing kilometers, repeat Ks on the track, or repeat 800s, repeat 2 miles, repeat miles, you want to make sure that as you get fitter, you really get out of your comfort zone and you start, the paces per rep are going to be much faster, and you want to make sure you're giving yourself much less rest. Okay, I was ready in the marathon when I could do 1,600 meter reps on the track with 45 seconds to 60 seconds rest in between each one of those reps in under 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Okay, for some, and maybe in your case, you want to get to a point where you can do 1,600 meter reps at, say, 7:20 per rep, 7 minutes and 20 seconds per rep, with 45 to 60 seconds recovery in between each one of those reps. Once you can get to that point where you can run at those paces, you are going to be dangerous. You are going to, the pace, the 8-minute mile pace or the 4:59 kilometer pace is no longer be as difficult as it once was. If you're, the athletes out there of how do I train for a 3:30 marathon, you want to be not only consistent with your mileage, but you want to make sure that you're spending around 20 to 40% of your weekly volume at or closer to or below your anaerobic threshold. Okay, anaerobic threshold, you're running anywhere from around 85 to 90% of your maximum heart rate. So again, high quality running, it's very aggressive, but again, the key to being able to sustain goal race pace for a longer period of time, and preferably longer than your competition, is you want to improve the body's lactate tolerance. Okay, so if you're just running easy, relaxed mileage every single week, or you're running those long runs easy every single weekend, it's just going to make you a very strong, superior, long, slow distance runner. So I would advise running a faster, varied pace long run one weekend, and then the next weekend, make sure you're jogging, okay, because you can't continue to push the body hard anaerobically and expect high returns on your investment. It's just not going to happen. And so I have also built a course on RunDreamAchieve.com specifically for athletes that are trying to break the 3-hour and 30-minute marathon barrier. So definitely check RunDreamAchieve.com out, or you can look below this video. There's links there as well. You just click on the courses link on my website, and basically in that course I go in depth on every single little detail of what, in my opinion, in my own experience, what the athlete needs to be thinking about to break a 3-hour and 30-minute marathon. Okay, and I'm touching on a few concepts here, but just scratching the surface. You definitely want to train on hillier terrain. Okay, you have to get beyond just running on flat surfaces all the time. That being said, psychologically, it will help you to do those your tempo runs, and your long runs on flat surfaces the majority of the time. Because again, psychologically, you see those splits, and if you're wearing your Garmin, once that split goes off and you see a fast split time, it helps psychologically, obviously, to feel like you're running at faster paces. But at the same time, you do want to get outside of your comfort zone, get comfortable being uncomfortable, train on hillier terrain, so that if you're training on hills at least a couple times per week, whether that's doing repeat hill repetitions, 200 to 300 meter reps, or you're running over just a long course, maybe doing a long run, but it's hillier, you do want to get accustomed to that, because the more you train on the hills, once it's time for you to race and you find a flat course, then your chances of racing more efficiently over this marathon distance and breaking the 3-hour and 30-minute barrier is going to be much, much higher for you. Okay, so get beyond just running on flat surfaces. Obviously, find a course that's going to be conducive to a sub 3-hour and 30-minute marathon time. Okay, there's no so-called fast courses if the athlete is not in phenomenal shape. But my advice is, if you're doing your homework and training and you're really doing your track sessions, you're expanding the duration of your tempo runs out to around 10 to 12 miles in length, and you're not just focusing on doing 3 to 4 mile tempo runs, you want to start off that low, but you don't want to stay at that duration. You want to extend the amount of time you're running at a much higher percentage of your max heart rate and building a higher lactic acid buildup as you're running it for longer periods of time. You do want to experience that, but if you do all that and you go into your race properly paced or properly tapered down, you are going to be able to have a much higher percentage in terms of your success rate in order of breaking the 3 hour and 30-minute marathon barrier. So I know this is a short video. I just want to go over a few topics and things that I want you to be thinking about as you're leading into your build-up. Obviously, there are resources below these videos as well as on RunDreamAchieve.com that will speed up your chances of success. And obviously, following a training program that is set up to help you really run those aggressive, faster paces, but also focusing on the recovery period, making sure that you're jogging, making sure that you're slowing down and relaxing and allowing some time for your body to heal from all these hard workouts you're doing. If you do all these things and you really continue to stay consistent with your training, you will break the 3 hour and 30-minute marathon barrier. So I hope this is helpful for you all. Feel free to leave me a comment below. How do you pace a sub 3:30 marathon? Now, I did create a course called the sub 3 hour 30-minute marathon bootcamp course on RunDreamAchieve.com. If this is a goal that you're aiming for, it is 8 minutes per mile for 26.2 miles, or you need to sustain 4:58 per kilometer for 42.2 kilometers. Now, I always talk about the importance of making sure that you don't go out too fast. You save that energy for the last 13.1 kilometers and especially in the last 10 kilometers of your marathon race. One of the biggest mistakes marathoners make is we get way too hyped up in the first half of the race. Again, this is 26.2 miles, 42.2 kilometers. You have more time to make a mistake in the marathon, which is good compared to if you're running a 5K or a 10K. You don't want to go out way too aggressive in the first half of a marathon and then be forced to blow up in the latter stages of the race. So breaking 3:30 is about strategy. It's about being smart with your energy consumption in the race. Again, when we're running aerobically, we're not building up so much lactic acid that it's forcing us to slow down, because again, if we're running aerobically, much less oxygen is required. The faster we run, the more oxygen is required, the more lactic acid that's built up, and the faster we run, the more lactic acid accumulation occurs, and it goes up, and we can't clear it faster than it's building up. That is the problem. And if you're running too much of your weekly mileage too easily, you're not going to break the 3 hour and 30-minute marathon barrier. So you want to teach the body to improve its lactate tolerance. The only way to do that is to look at what the best middle to long distance runners are doing. Okay, that's what I did in my own career. It's what helped me go from a 2:43 marathon to a 2:19 marathon and breaking the 2 hour and 20-minute marathon barrier. Okay, it's a massive jump to go from 6:14 mile pace to 5:19 mile pace, but I'm proof, and there's plenty of other athletes around the world that have run much faster than I did, that you can drop significant time off of your personal best. If your current personal best right now is 4:30 for the marathon and you're dreaming about breaking a sub 3:30 marathon, do not believe it's impossible. It is possible. There's plenty of examples out there of athletes dropping an hour off their marathon, or dropping 20 minutes or 30 minutes off their marathon PR. The 3:30 marathon, you have to focus on a lot of different angles, okay? You want to make sure that you are dropping water bottles out during your long runs, so that again, you get in the habit of drinking in training, so that you get into the race and you focus on consuming enough fluid in your race that you don't become dehydrated, and you definitely don't want to become dehydrated when it's too late, okay? This is a big mistake a lot of athletes that are definitely capable of breaking the 3:30 marathon barrier have. They try to run a marathon with just sipping in the race, or thinking they can run a marathon without taking in any fluid. Do not make that mistake, because you can be the most well-trained athlete, both physically and mentally, and ruin your chances of breaking the 3:30 marathon if you neglect this, and if you do not drink and practice drinking in training, okay? You do not want to get in the habit of running slow and easy every single weekend. Okay, if you're new to the channel, if you're a regular viewer, you already know that I'm a big believer in varied pace long runs, sprinkling in a mixture of anaerobic VO2 max efforts. So that might mean running an all-out mile a couple times throughout your long run. It might mean doing an all-out mile, running a few miles easy, running 5 or 6 miles, or around 8 to 10 kilometers or so at your anaerobic threshold, running easy for a few miles or kilometers, running an all-out mile or an all-out kilometer, a couple kilometers in the long run. Again, doing that teaches the body to utilize what it has much more of, which is fat storage. You want to teach the body to, when you're running at race pace or near race pace, to call upon what it has much more of, and that's the fat storage. Okay, if you're running long, slow, easy mileage every single day, you're still burning fat, but running at faster paces and burning fat to be able to call upon carbohydrate storage and to conserve that for the last 10 kilometers of this race. That is what it's going to get. That's what's going to definitely get you results as well. Mental rehearsal is key as well. A lot of athletes that are trying to break the 3:30 marathon bypass this altogether. Okay, we focus so much of our attention on physical training, doing our repetitions, doing tempo runs, other types of workouts, that we a lot of times do not pay attention to the importance of mental training. Now remember, a sub 3-hour marathon is 8 minutes per mile for 26.2 miles, or 4:58 per kilometer, or 4:59 per kilometer, around that range. So in order to do that, you have to train the body as well as the mind. The types of workouts I would recommend for athletes trying to break the 3:30 marathon, and I definitely go in depth in the course, is repeat 1,600 meter reps on the track, 5 to 6 1,600 meter reps, 3 to 4 3,200 meter reps. If you're doing those repeat 1,600s, you want to work on running those around 650 to 655 when you're in great shape. When you're first starting off, you might be doing them just below threshold effort, which that's going to be right around 715 to 720 per rep. Doing 800s at threshold effort, which again, when you're not very fit, it's going to be around 340 to 344. And when you're extremely fit, it's going to be around 315 to 317 per rep. And remember, the reps are going to be slower in the early stages because, again, you're not in great anaerobic shape. So let your body adapt first. It's going to take 3 to 4 weeks for the body to adapt to the stresses you're placing on it. So start off slower with more rest. And as you get fitter, you want to make sure that the paces are much more aggressive, and you want to make sure that you're giving yourself much less rest. So that might mean in the early stages for doing repeat 1,600s, for somebody that's trying to break a 3:30 marathon, again, it might be doing reps at around 715 to 720 with a 3-minute recovery. But when you're very, very fit, that might be doing reps around 640 to 645 per rep, but with only 45 seconds to 90 seconds rest. Okay, the same with the 800s. Starting off, it might just mean just starting off at threshold effort, just running just below threshold effort, so right around 335 to 338 with maybe a 2-minute rest. And then when you're extremely fit and you're midway through a buildup and you really start working on your speed development, that might mean working on doing those 800s around 317 to 319 per rep, but only with like 45 seconds to 60 seconds rest in between each one of those reps. So again, the overall focus here is to improve the body's lactate tolerance, teach the body to clear lactic acid faster than it's building up. And again, easy running is still critical. It's vital to still run slow throughout your week. But again, if you're running too much slow mileage, and 90% of your weekly mileage is run at an easy aerobic effort, and only 10% is spent training at very aggressive VO2 max efforts, it's going to be hard to break the 3:30 marathon barrier because, again, this is a highly competitive time. You're really getting closer to the elite level, especially when you break 3 hours. But a lot of athletes are capable of breaking the 3:30 marathon barrier. But again, it comes back to a lot of factors. Weather is key. Preferably if you can get a cool day with light wind, that's great. Making sure that you're picking the right type of course to run this type of fast time on, which, Chicago, Berlin, London, Monumental Indianapolis Marathon in Indianapolis is a great one. Any of the Tokyo flat courses, Rotterdam, Paris, Amsterdam, these types of courses will yield you a higher chance of running under the 3-hour barrier, provided you have done your homework and training. Okay, no course is fast unless the athlete is prepared well. Okay, so just keep these types of workouts in mind. Ladder drills are also very important. Okay, so that might mean, I did over the ladder drills over the years, even training for my own marathons. It might mean doing 4 1,600 meter reps, 3 1,000 meter reps, 2 800 meter reps, and maybe like 4 400 meter reps. Okay, and then or doing sets. It might mean doing a 5,000, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, giving yourself maybe a 5-minute recovery, and then doing another set of that. Okay, very, very hard, a lot of volume there. But again, you want to be thinking about these types of workouts as you're training for your marathon. And what's great about the courses I created, as well as the training plans, they give you a step-by-step idea of what you need to be doing on a daily basis in aiming for this 3:30 marathon barrier. The running courses that I have on RunDreamAchieve are much more in-depth than the training plans, because I actually teach you in video tutorials the exact mindset and the exact strategies you need to be really following in order to break your specific time goals. So definitely check out RunDreamAchieve.com, check out our running courses, the training plans, as well as the monthly coaching options that are there for you. Hope this video is helpful for you in terms of answering the question of how do you pace a sub 3:30 marathon. Negative split. Do not run fast in the first half. Conserve some energy for the later stages of the race. Then you will definitely be much better prepared to run that last half of the race faster than you ran the first half and get to the finish line in 3:29:59 or faster on the clock. So I hope this is helpful. Leave me a comment below. Like and share these videos. I really appreciate the support, and I will talk to you all in the next one.